Now these can only go in here one way. Today, I'd like to see what I can do to improve the look of the keyboard. You can see there are a couple tops that are missing, and also quite a few that are chipped on the front edge. But for being over 100 years old, this thing is remarkably clean. The people before me must have kept their hands really tidy. Well, how about that? I suppose before we get any further, we should really address the elephant in the room. These are genuine ivory keys. Well, key tops. You can see the main body of the key is actually wood. The tops of the keys, or key tops, are a thin veneer of ivory. They have both a head and a tail. Just like the elephants, whose lives were taken, so their tusks could be used to make these possible. For this piano and millions of others. And no, I don't condone the slaughtering of elephants, and yes, it's terrible. But that's something I appreciate about these historic pianos. They remind us of the highs and lows of our past. These three loose key tops are original to the piano. This first one I found in the piano bench. The second one I found and this third one, well, I know where that one goes. All three of them have some sort of mystery adhesive on the back. Shows you how well it worked. I'm not sure what it is, but we'll call it Satan's earwax. I wanted to reuse them, so I had to remove the adhesive. Thankfully, sanding on 120 grit did the job. They cleaned up just fine, thankfully, so I'll set them aside in their own container. A lot of the white key tops had damage to the front edge, chips, or other areas that were missing. I was hoping for the sake of originality I could repair this and retain what was left of these key tops. I thought, well, why don't I use epoxy putty? Thankfully, we can get epoxy putty in white. White? Oh, and by the way, this key isn't out of the Hadorf. It's from a piano that gave its life for science. Let's see how it does. Well, the color doesn't look too good, but it's mixed up and we're going to try anyway. Well, that's not going to work. I did a little initial sanding on it and shaping, but right off the bat what I'm noticing is not so much the color difference, but the lack of opacity in the patch. There's ivory, there's the repair area. You can see much less light comes through. I'm realizing that ivory's a lot like our fingernails. I won't show you mine because nobody asked for that, but it tells me that this epoxy putty won't work. So I checked my bone pile for replacements. I've been sorting through my collection of spare ivory key tops, and I think I found a few that'll work. You know, I thought I always had a true appreciation for ivory and what it was, but man, as I dig through here, I can't help but feel like I'm dumpster diving at the local nail salon after senior discount pedicure day. Ugh. Well, let's see what it takes to get these ivory heads off of the key sticks, hopefully without damaging the key stick itself. Oh, it's close. Come on. Well, I was hoping a gentle heat would do it. I've got it kind of on a medium heat. I'm going to set the iron from linen to rawhide. Oh. With the old key top out of the way, I had to remove the adhesive that was holding it in place. Nice! Now to glue on our replacement. Thankfully, I can still source replacement adhesive pads called wafers. I bought the vanilla variety. If you're doing sharps, you use chocolate. That are used to attach the ivory to the key stick. They're heat and water activated. Full disclosure, I've never worked with these before, but they're the traditional method, so I want to figure it out and do it right. I soak them in water for 30 seconds, then place them on the key stick, and I use my heated clamping pad, which is heating next to me on an upside down iron, and without getting burnt, get it exactly where it needs to be while making sure the seam between the head and the tail on the key is nice and tight, just like they did it at the factory. This is the first one that I did, and while the process was a little intimidating, I was practicing on the piano at this point, it turned out really well. After drying, the key tops needed sanding, both between the old original piece, the tail in this case, and the new piece where there was a height difference, and then along the edges where there was some glue squeeze out and some overhang. And of course, around every corner, there's a new challenge waiting for me. So when I'm replacing just a head, I use the original location of the tail for reference, because the head is trimmed to length and I have the proper overhang and my seam is in the right place. But I've got two keys where I have to replace a head and a tail, and I want to make sure the seam ends up where it should be so it's in a nice line across the keyboard. So what I'm doing is using this little block, just rubber band down in place before the tail goes down. It would go here. And then I can set my head in place and then check with these feeler gauges that are stacked up to the right thickness of overhang, checked off an original on the keyboard. All right, that's dried overnight. Now we can do the tail. Each time I made sure to clean the seam between the head and the tail. Any dirt here will create a gap in the glue joint, which we don't want. I eventually learned that reheating the clamping pad with a hot soldering iron gave me a little extra working time. I repaired 17 key tops total and was able to return 2 out of 3 of the original key tops back to their key sticks. I was almost ready to put them back on the key bed and see how things looked, but not without a lot of sanding first. I ended up having to sand the tops of most of these repairs all the way up to 1500 grit before I hit them with the buffing wheel. While I managed to keep the majority of the keys in order during the bushing and keytop repair, some of them did get mixed up. Thankfully, I numbered them on the sides when I initially disassembled the piano. And here are the ones we repaired. And they can only go in here one way. And that's the right way. Although there are only 7 different unique shapes of key on the keyboard of the piano, none of these key sticks are interchangeable because of how they fan either left or right to go around the structure of the piano near the strings. And the moment of truth. Well, the first thing I noticed is that the new bushings made a big difference. There's a lot less slop between the keys and the pins. Well, I'd say that was a significant improvement, and I'm really happy about how it turned out. It's finally starting to look like a piano again. Okay, not really. But it's good progress. Next week, we'll see about fixing that cabinet. Stay tuned. If you want. No pressure.